Hello guys, welcome to another mixing tutorial, and let's take a look at the drums bass guitars on this cover of Born in Dissonance. Man, I love a MESHUGGAH solo. I just love it. Anyhow, let's take off the mastering plugins and explain them at the end, which is when I put them on when mixing, and let's talk drums. So this is a new drum sound. I have cooked up a new drum sound with Invasion, made to be a very simple, low plug-in drum sound that tries to sound a little bit more natural. So that's the Invasion kit with the last kick, Pearl Masters Birch 22-inch by 16, so a shallower one, and the Pearl Reference Brass snare 14 by 6.5. I tried this snare because in Invasion it sounds super good, but it's tuned a little bit higher, and here it has a little bit more beef. Very much appreciated. Basically stock cymbals, I believe. Low tuned versions of the toms. And yeah, I guess I'll let you look at the cymbals in case you want to copy them as well. Ooh, not stuck on that one. Or that one, okay. What's that? What's the hats? These. Cool. Cool. So we're gonna go from something that sounds like this to that. It's not night and day, but it is night and day, but it's not drastically overprocessed, right? God damn it, excuse me again. Did I sneeze yet on this tutorial? Okay. Let's start with the kick processing. There's 3 little plugins here. First, I always like to put a stage of console emulation, whether that's an SSL, which I usually use, or the Focusrite one. Just because it has a little bit of saturation already going through it, that makes the sample sound a little bit warmer right from the get-go. And it's all about the little EQ moves. So here's a little boost in the mid-range at 2K and boost in the high end from 3.3K up. So it's thicker and a little bit brighter too. Here's the main EQ work on the Pro Q, getting rid of boxy stuff at 400, boomy stuff at 180, and more boosts in the mid-range. Notice that for this kick, I didn't boost the very highs at 8K and 10K. I stuck to the mid-range. That has a different sound. This here almost makes it sound like I did this here, because this frequency masks a lot of that sub. And then for those are basically saturation and EQ stages to shape it, and then it's all down to the compressor. So arouser, right, at a very light 4:1 setting, very light. Very slow attack of 30 milliseconds, good enough to let some transient go through, and a fast release. Let's see how much gain reduction. 3 or 4 dBs. So our kick goes from this to this. It just basically gets the sub controlled and the dynamics to be more consistent. Same plugins on the snare, but different settings. Oh no, there's the SSL emulation on the snare. So no particular reason why. They're both cool. The high-end boost here is from 2K upward, and of course a little bit of that saturation juice. Snare, please. Livelier, more interesting. here's the main EQ work. Again, very, very little. So a boost in the 200 fundamental, a cut in the 600 junk, and a little boost in the snap at 9K and the sizzle of the snares. Good enough. Then, same compressor, but for snares, I like to have a little bit of a slower release, just very slightly slower to make it duck a little bit longer, and a faster attack so that there's a little bit less transient poking through and it has a different shape, but more gain reduction. Everything off, everything on. It doesn't even necessarily sound any better. It just sounds more controlled and final, if that makes any sense. So toms, there's very few toms on this song. There's that ending bit. So for toms, there's only 2 plugins. An EQ to shape them, because toms need quite a bit of shaping, and that's usually going to be removing some of this 500 junk. Removing that gives you the modern scooped toms that we're looking for. Also controlling some of the sub and boosting some of the attack at 6K. Night and day. Yep, very simple. And a compressor in the same philosophy as the rest. But this one has a faster attack because for toms, I don't want there to be a lot of pokey transient. I want to have them well compressed so that I can bring up the sustain, which is the opposite. Yeah, you can hear them pumping and the sustain is more pronounced. I could even turn them up because I believe they're pretty quiet in the mix. Good. Then I like to bus everything that has cymbals into the brass bus so that I can process everything. I can hit the cymbals that are in the rooms, overheads, spot mics, treat them right here. Firstly, I like to pick out the more annoying stuff that's always there with my own ear and an EQ. A big one at 3.3, right on this right crash. And a general one at 4K to soothe that area. That also, the mastering kind of blows up this super high region. So I have a little slope here at 20,000 hertz. That's not really about 20,000 hertz. It's more about the slope that goes that way. Because there's not a lot of information here, but this information here gets a little bit quiet. Then, soothe works hard to get rid of cymbal resonances that I might not even be hearing, and that very hard to notch at the 5K, 6K area. This preset here, the cymbal smooth one, works very nicely at points soothed to around the 4.4K region. Gets rid of a lot of trash. So good job. And then on this spot mic bus, no, not really. This has the overheads and spot mics, which is more localized cymbals. I just took out a little bit of 1K, make sure the cymbals aren't too mid-rangey. That's a very busy area. Overheads, absolutely zero EQ, just some compression that you guys know I love on overheads to make sure that the cymbals sound energetic. I always want cymbals to be pumping some kind of needle. That's a huge difference in sounding like the cymbals are hit hard. So, yep, that's DF Comp. It's a compressor that you just choose the drum type and it gives you a cheat code to some cool settings that work on it. But yeah, I've used limiters for this in the past. You just got to try whatever you'd like and maybe play with the mix knob because I have this here in parallel because it was very heavy. So you can go heavy and do parallel on overheads. That's something I like. Room near. I like to leave this unprocessed, but there was a little bit of snare stupidity there. Didn't sound good in the whole mix. But I like to leave this unprocessed as a very real version of the kit. And room is where I try to pick up some snare decay by compressing it hard. It's just hitting the snare that I make super loud in the room in contact. Doesn't look super loud, but in comparison to toms and cymbals, it is pretty loud. And then a compressor hits it. Bam. It gets distorted, it gets long. It's a very cool effect. Then you just EQ the room to taste. Oh my god, no, don't touch its shape, please. Okay, sorry, my autism is showing. Annoying frequencies. By now, our full drum sounds like that. Very cool. Now it's about gluing it in the drum bus. First step of gluing is some saturation. So the drum sound is saturated in the warm tape mode at about a 20% setting, very soft. And then I save the subs beneath 100 to a different region so I can distort them a little bit less, because distorting your kick drum can end up badly, so I do it very sparingly. This into an EQ to make it brighter. Pultec EQ at 10K is one of the most effective brightening tools. Love it on a drum bus. And then drum bus compression. This is good because this is where we get to control the kick drum and snare drum to make sure that they're not overly above the cymbals. So that's a little bit of a faster attack than I usually do, and a medium to fast release with a higher setting on the ratio to make sure it compresses a little bit harder. Kind of glues it together, which is cool. And it's blended at about 60%. So I'm leaving a little bit, 40% of the dry signal to make sure that it's not too heavy. I'm actually liking the full setting. I'll leave it at 70. Cool. That's the drum sound. After that, there's just this little superstition about cutting the low end of the kick out, the subs beneath 30. If you can hear that, God bless you. Some people have subs and this would destroy them. And I like to do it at the very end, because if I do it in the kick, it can switch the phase of the kick and make it cancel out with the rooms. I always like to do this as late as possible on mixing. Sometimes I'll only do it on the master. So that's this drum sound. Few plugins, but they work effectively. Very nice. Here's one of my favorite bass tones. So happy with this one. So this is how it starts. Old strings on my Marcus Miller and a very saturated bass DI from my preamps, which I run with a few emulations that they have where they emulate a transformer breaking up. So you can see the DI is super consistent, which is cool. You can get that with some other effect, but it's not essential. It's just a little bit of my own flavor. And I ran it into Tone Hub, Bendeth bass. So Bendeth has a lot of bass sounds that are there's a few with no distortion, that's the odd ones, and the even ones have distortion. So I picked the two, which is the first one with distortion, and it was immediately great. I think I just boosted the gain to max. I was liking this, but I felt like I needed more grind. So after the usual EQ moves, so anything beneath 50 is just rumble. And there's a little bit of boominess at 168 and a bunch of bad mid-range at 500. That honky shit. There's some awesome mid-range at 2K. Yes. Night and day. Helping it cut through the drums. But then this wasn't enough and it was feeling kind of fake. So I decided to add Saturn before the amp and distort the DI. Now we're talking. So this is the 400 to 4K region, and it's just heavy saturation to the max. Running this through the amp. Totally different story. $80 would probably be something cooler than what I did at 100. That was kind of crushing it. Cool. That's an awesome bass tone right there with 3 plugins. Let's do guitar. So the guitars is the STL Tone Hub Diesel Herbert pack on the high gain channel 3 with the hex drive on. I thought the high end was very MESHUGGAH-y, so there it is. I picked that and I did a little trick where I EQ the DI before the amp to get rid of some mud. Make the sound a little bit more tight. You can really change the sound of the amp by doing this to your DI. I just scoop some of that 300. There's a big EQ move here to make it fit. So the small ones is just the high pass at 65 and the low pass at 11K to make sure there's no rumble or no excessive fizz. A little notch at 2K and a little thing at 250. But the big one is the dynamic palm mute control at 140. This is what saves the palm mute sections from going too loud. It goes down as much as 6 dB when a palm mute is hitting. This saves our low end. It's amazing, and even after this, it's a little bit too much. I still like it, but that was too much without it. So there it is. 3 plugins, woo! Let's do this solo. I am so lazy that I just did the solo with the same tone as the rhythms. Didn't even care, just dragged it there. The main thing that it needs to be a MESHUGGAH solo is that it needs the doubler or something like this. This is a chorus effect that makes you feel like it was kind of double tracked, and these doubles are slightly chorusy, and that's very important. Makes it stereo, makes it chorusy. Very nice. Big EQ. So very soft low end roll off. We don't need that. And a very harsh cut from 6K up makes it sound more lead like, for lack of a better word, more radio. Harshness at 3K goes down, and the boost at 666. That's the key for a solo to cut through, is the boost at 666, man. You hear all the notes there? That's it. Make it a bit wet, so a very long but very quiet reverb. And then Soothe takes care of the harsher peaks. So, this lead is on the Will Putney amp simulator, amp 1, cap 3. Cap 3 was a good in-between. Reverb pedal on, carrying the sound. 25% wet, 3 seconds long. Very obvious delay that needs to be had. Stereo ping pong with a little bit of modulation. It works. Your basic EQ to control it. A high pass at 150, a low pass at 7K, and there's some harshness at 2. Yep, the last lead is a variation on this tone. It has cap 1, which is a little bit more aggro. Has that pointy fizz, which is desirable. That reverb is off there. Yep, but there's pedals before it. There's a pitcher that's doing the bends, because I couldn't do these bends because I'm a pussy. You see it moving. Anyways, it just gives me more precise bends. I don't care. Oh god, I'm tired. Maybe that's why I couldn't do the fucking bends. And it has a very important chorus pedal that is very crazy and bad, so it works for this. The delay on this one is the same, except the modulation is turned up because I want the repeats to have chorus. Super good at 25% wetness, which is a bit more. And the EQ, again, the frowny face to control it. That's big right there. That is the mix, guys. Let's blow this up in the master. So first things first, Goal Foss. This guy is like a magical EQ. You just run your mix through it, and it helps you balance the bass dynamically. You can see it try to balance my noise floor right now. And it just tries to fit your mix into this hearing curve that the human ear really likes, with a good bass, good treble, and a little bit of a scoop in the mids. You're gonna watch it balance the bass, and you're gonna watch it boost the highs, which I've cut a little bit because it did too much. It also chooses correct frequencies to enhance the guitar notes in the mid-range. That's magic that I don't know how to explain. Mix bus compressor. I usually use the Joel Wanasek one, but it has a lot of boosting and saturation that sometimes isn't good. I felt it wasn't good on this mix, so I grabbed just the compressor, the SSL one. That's 10 ratio because I want to hear it working. 30 attack, which is the easiest attack, the slowest one. It lets a lot of drums go through, but it just gives a little bit of pumping glue. And the slowest, I mean, the auto release is sometimes the slowest release, but based on frequency, it's a bit faster, I believe. And this just helps glue the mix together a little bit. Let's see if you hear it. Swear to God, it's not working. Okay, it's barely working. I fucked up the gain staging on this one. Ignore it, but you get the settings anyway. Very popular settings. The new guy is this T-Rex clipper that was free for some reason on the iKey multimedia mailing list. So if you want to try and get it, maybe it's still there. And this is a different way to get loudness that is not compression or limiting. It's just clipping the top of the drums and bass off of your mix. Sounds a little bit aggressive. This one actually sounds a bit warm to my ears. Let's push it and you'll hear. I'm just going for like 1 dB of cutting, maybe 2. Please. You can hear what that sounds like, very loud but very crunchy, which is awesome. I like it. And the linear multiband compressor is a compressor that I like to use to shape the EQ of my mix, and I do a little bit of work here. I let a lot of low end on the guitars. So if I control it here, I get the low end of the guitar to pump the rest of the low end of the mix, which is cool. That's here in the low mid band. I make sure that the threshold is a little bit lower so that it cuts those frequencies. The rest of them, I just let it react as it sees fit, but I push that one a little bit. It's cool that you guys see me use this a little bit of a different way every mix. And then just limiting. You guys know I usually like to try to cut the kick and the snare out of the limiter. That's what I try to hit. And if I dig into the guitars, it's because I'm working it hard. But there was very little kick and snare left after the clipper. Kick and snare transient, that is. So on this one, it means I can work the limiter harder and the mix is louder. Of course, it has less drum punch, but it's louder. So this is cool, and I'm still learning about combining these two guys. Yeah, epic. That is the mixing tutorial for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed it. Be sure to leave questions down below. Watch all the other ones that your support covers access to. And that's it for me. Take care.